comes from our friend Nikhil, the reasonable Georgia fan. And we've had Nikhil ask a few questions before. This is a little long, but stick with it. We were led to believe logically that win-loss and strength of schedule for playing in a tougher conference and schedule would be rewarded. The committee themselves overall seemed to relay that with their rankings generally. When ranking Ohio State ahead of Georgia, they said both have quality wins, but Ohio State has the better quote-unquote quality loss. I guess we're still doing this, he says. But this makes sense to me, especially as how poor Beck and UGA have looked against lesser teams. But however, how do they justify this as Notre Dame? Why are we as a country, media, general populace elevating Notre Dame after they lost to Northern Illinois? All caps. Not Illinois, not Indiana, not one of the best or even good group of 5 teams. If Indiana replaced one of their non-conferences with a loss to Northern Illinois, but still had their other strong wins and blowouts, the quote-unquote eye test the committee claims they would not be ranked as high as Notre Dame right now. Based on the justification they gave about quality wins and losses, I see no reason why Notre Dame should be ranked ahead of 6-2 Alabama, 8-1 SMU, or even LSU or Ole Miss. Basically, a 2-loss team facing a much stronger schedule should not be ranked behind a team that lost to, hold on, this is all caps again, Northern Illinois, based on name and clout. Sorry, that's my rant. All this to say, besides the deserving/earning, as a UGA fan, I would much rather play Notre Dame in the playoff than Alabama, and so deep down, I'm not unhappy about it. That's pretty awesome.
Here's my
I like the
response to
circuitous path Nikhil took to like, well, they might play Georgia if they get in.
Nikhil, can we run that? That was a good question. I think it could have been a column.
Yeah.
You know where you're going to see that show up, Andy?
Yeah.
Is not in the rankings. You're going to see it show up at the end. Like Notre Dame isn't going to probably get in with 2 losses. So you will be rewarded. It might not be showing up in the current rankings, but Notre Dame's tightrope that they have to walk in order to get to the field, like actually in it, is a lot less forgiving, right? Isn't that the answer to the question?
I think so, but like we've talked about the possibility of an 11-1 Indiana not making it. An 11-1 Indiana has to get in over 11-1 Notre Dame, right?
Well, this is the other part of the coin here too, because actually,
wait, unless the ones to Purdue, no, because then they beat Ohio State.
Andy, this is what has me thinking a lot, okay? Because Notre Dame is ranked as high as it is because of preconceived notions of who they are based on talent and program status, right? Like that's,
yes.
If Notre Dame's resume,
the stars matter vote.
If Notre Dame's resume was swapped with Indiana's, Indiana would probably be 17 or something, right? Like they wouldn't be anywhere near the top 8. So we have to acknowledge the fact that Notre Dame's ranking is in part due to the sum of its parts. That said, and this is an interesting thought exercise, but in the new era of college football, where we know less and less about how good these teams are actually going to be because of the sheer numbers of roster turnover on a year-to-year basis, at what point does brand recognition, because Indiana is proving that entire concept this year, which is Indiana's football brand is a nothing burger. No one knows it. There's nothing recognizable about Indiana's logo off of the hardwood. But if Indiana did a good enough job through the portal to assemble a great team, an Indiana team that I think would surely be competitive with Notre Dame on the field, when do we drop the preconceived notion brand correlation bullshit before we go into this? Because like you have to get, like, the thing is that like Penn State took the brunt of my criticism, but in actuality, like you could have replaced Penn State with Texas. You could have replaced Penn State with Notre Dame. We're talking about teams that have no clear identifiable wins against quality opponents who are good because we think they're good.
Well, Notre Dame does have a good win, which makes it a little bit different. But again,
this Louisville counts, right? I don't know.
Northern Illinois.
Yeah. So like, that's the thing I struggle with. It's like in the past, if Indiana was 8-0, based on the way the sport was set up, you knew, and I would even say beyond the shadow of a doubt, that Notre Dame was probably better than them based on roster for roster comparisons of the recruiting rankings and the results of who they have on the roster.
But you don't know that now.
I don't know that you know that now, this is still like a good story. We need to I might actually call in. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to call in. I used to call into the teleconference, but now we're live. I can't. But I would love to ask a committee chair Ward Manuel this question of like, how much does preconceived notions of what a team was supposed to be or should be creeps into your mind?
He's going to say it doesn't, but we all know it does.
Because if it doesn't, then what's the answer here?
He's going to say it doesn't because they have to say it doesn't. They can't say it does. They can't give the stars matter answer that you actually would honestly give.
But it would have been an acceptable answer to me 2 years ago. I don't think it's an acceptable answer anymore.
It's definitely not. It's definitely not. I think Washington last year helped. I think Michigan last year helped prove that.
And like the thing that I got a lot on Twitter from Penn State fans, and I get that I upset them and it's fine, but
the minds at JLab, though, they're coming up with great headphones. They are gearing up for college football with some of the top talent in the game. From Travis Hunter to Ohio State's Will Howard and Quinshon Judkins, these football stars embody JLab's core values of innovation, performance, and excellence. Just as JLab pushes the boundaries of audio technology, these athletes redefine their sport with skill and dedication. Whether you're traveling to watch your favorite team or streaming the game on your mobile device, JLab has you covered. Find the blue box at retailers near you or visit jlab.com.
Everybody keeps saying, well, we know what would happen if Indiana had this schedule, or we know what would happen if Penn State played Indiana. And like the hypothetical bullshit is gone now. Like we do not know that. Like we do not definitively know that Penn State or even Notre Dame is better than Indiana.
I am glad you brought this up, Ari, because let's roll into our next question from Jeffrey, because I think you're going to enjoy this one too.
Okay.
So Jeffrey sends this tweet with a screenshot from a Reddit thread. And I actually saw this Reddit thread. If you're not hanging out on the CFB subreddit on Reddit, I'm telling you, if you guys love this show, that's a place you'd love to hang out. They're really cool people. Every once in a while, we'll do an AMA on there.
Smart.
So here's what Jeffrey, and now before I go on, Jeffrey is the one who tweeted at me in the summer that Indiana was going to be 9-0 going into the Michigan game. Jeffrey is a long-suffering Indiana fan, drank the Coach Sig's Kool-Aid way before anybody else, and said they're going to be 9-0 going to the Michigan game. That's the only person that I have ever seen predict that. So props to Jeffrey. Oh, producer River says we have something here. We have something. I don't know what we have, but we have something. There it is. I believe Indiana football can be a top 25 program. Of course, I'm 55 and it hasn't happened yet. Can Coach Sigs do it? That's a question from right after he got hired from our guy, Jeffrey. And then Jeffrey told me this summer, 9-0 going to the Michigan game. Book it. So let us look at these stats. So this is 2024 Indiana and 2023 Michigan after 9 games. So bear in mind, this is when Michigan has yet to play Penn State or Ohio State last year. So Michigan, 2023 points per game, 41.9. Indiana, 2024 points per game, 46.6. Average margin of victory for Michigan, 35.2. For Indiana, 32.9. Here's where it gets interesting. The opponent record for that Michigan team at this point in the season, 36-44. For Indiana at this point in the season, 34-45. Red zone efficiency, Indiana's is actually better. Turnover margin, they're dead even. Third down conversion rate, they're dead even. Plays of 20-plus yards. Indiana's team this year actually has 5 more than Michigan's team last year. Time of possession is almost a dead heat. Both are very lightly penalized teams. They're very disciplined. Now, through 9 games last year, Michigan was number 2 in the AP poll and number 3 in the CFP rankings.
Well,
brand bias.
Yeah. The thing that he didn't have there was strength of schedule, right? And like,
no, he did. He did. He had the records of the opponents, but
yeah, but that's not the same thing. Like
Michigan's strength of schedule last year was not great going into this week.
No, it looks very similar. I'm actually looking.
It was about to go because they were about to play Penn State. This was when they played Penn State.
Here's who Michigan played up to this point last year: East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, and Purdue.
UNLV might have been the best team out of that bunch.
And like UNLV was not who they
UNLV played for the Mountain West Championship last year.
Yeah. We're not nearly as good as they are this year, I don't think. Right? That's still fair to say.
No,
right?
They were really good. They had Jade Mayava. Now, actually, I don't know if Jade Mayava had become their starter yet at that point. Because remember, he replaced the injured starter.
Mayava became their starter in week 3.
After the Michigan game. So those are very similar resumes.
I wish I had that.
Very similar.
For the column last night. It's very compelling, but it's true.
You're right. Now, that Michigan team beat Penn State this week, and like going to Penn State, raised the strength of schedule, made everything. But I will say, here's what this Indiana team can do to get looked at like that Michigan team. Have the same regular season achievement that was their best regular season achievement. Beat Ohio State. The good news is I think this Indiana team gets into the playoff without beating Ohio State. But if they beat Ohio State, you got to put Indiana up at like number 2, right?
So here's the question too that I have to ask you, Andy. Do you buy? Because like, listen, I got a lot of this yesterday, and I'm sure you did too. Of like, oh, who cares? It's going to play out, right? Do you get that a lot? Oh, who cares? Everything's going to come together.
I'm the one usually saying that. I don't think that in this particular case because, yes, they do play Ohio State, but we just showed you how differently they're being treated.
The thing that I think is important, and I don't know if you think it's important, is that doesn't the starting point in the rankings also have an impact on your margin of error? Like if you are number 3 right now, instead of number 8, you still might get your butt kicked by Ohio State if that happens, right? But like, I think that your odds of making it into the field, if there is a debate, are higher if you start higher. Like, I don't think I don't think that, oh, who cares that Penn State's 6 and Indiana's 8? It's no big deal. It's only 2 spots. It's like those 2 spots could be the difference at the end of the year if things get weird, right? And it's harder to drop further when you're in that position. I think that the rankings are a message of what the committee thinks of you in that moment. So even though Indiana does have all the opportunity in the world to go to Ohio State and show everybody what they're about, I still think that the ranking should be fair, just, and equitable for everybody right now. And like seeing that is actually disheartening because like you don't want to believe that it's true. You want to believe that a smaller fan base is just insecure about their brand recognition. But when you see something like that, it's like very hard. Like, and we all know in the back of our heads that exists, right? To a certain extent, these people who are doing it in the committee room are humans. That's just messed up to look at. Like, it's just messed up to look at.
It's tough because it is shocking how similar they are.
Because the stats are the same. Yeah.
And then like that's not even cooked. Like, that's not cherry picked. Like, Michigan had played nobody at this point.
Yeah.
But nobody was saying Michigan. Well, that's not true. A lot of people were saying Michigan had played nobody. And then they stopped after they played Penn State because Penn State was good.
But like, Andy, I'm even guilty of it myself. I was guilty of singling out Penn State yesterday because Penn State wasn't the only team that should have been singled out.
Notre
Penn
Dame
State didn't do anything. Notre Dame should have been in that scenario too. And I think you could make the case on an outside basis that Texas is in that same boat. And like I just assume that Texas is better than Penn State because Texas has a better brand and a better recruiting resume.
Read the Dear Andy written version tomorrow. There's a really interesting question about a scenario where a bunch of teams finish 6-2 in the SEC and 10-2 overall. And you're going to be surprised when you get to the Texas section. Because that if Texas is stuck with a bunch of other 10-2 SEC teams, it does not go well for Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So just bear that in mind. Or it shouldn't if we're just rewarding the best resumes. But we'll see. We'll see what actually happens.